Did you know that despite making up 50% of sellers, women hold just 30% of the sales leadership roles? It's not a pipeline problem. That's a promotion problem. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where we make the new rules of success for high-performing women in sales. And I'm your host, Amy Evans, sales leader turned executive coach. After 25 years in the trenches at Salesforce, EDP, and startups, I now help ambitious sales managers step into second-line leadership roles. If you are ready to lead with authority, earn what you're worth, and make a bigger impact, you are in the right place. Click follow so the next episode will be waiting for you. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. Today's topic is one that comes up in almost every coaching conversation that I have, and that is executive presence. What is it? How do you show it? And what gets in the way? My guest today is Slma Shelbayah, who is an executive presence. I can't even say it.
We're just, you know what? We just need to move and
it's so great, right? Executive presence. I can say these words. So executive presence and communication strategist. And she's the founder of Shelbayah Consulting. She's a former CNN journalist who now coaches executives on how to communicate clearly. I need help, obviously, with clarity, confidence, and authority. And she knows firsthand what executive presence looks like and the mistakes that leaders make that get in the way of them delivering on that promise. So, Slma, let's start here. When somebody says executive presence, what does that mean to you?
So thank you first and foremost for having me on, Amy. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and really looking forward to diving into one of my favorite topics. I would say for a lot of people, when they think of executive presence, and I'm going to start from that angle, what people actually think it is versus what it truly is. They think, oh, executives. We're talking about executives and leaders and decision makers. We're talking about either senior leaders, C-suite. We're talking about an executive person from the lens of careers, right? Whereas really executive presence is about an individual and how they show up, right? It's the feel, the look, and the value of any individual, because we're all executives of our lives, right? So how we show up into a conversation, how we show up into a personal conversation as well as a business conversation, takes a level of executive presence depending on that moment. So to me, it's about that harmonious relationship on how you can make others feel when you are in their presence. That's like the simple response to that.
Oh my gosh, I love that explanation. So let's take this idea of executive presence and how you make people feel a little bit deeper. What are some of the core elements that women in particular, you feel, need to pay attention to when they are working on getting access to that executive presence and how they make people feel and how they show up in those conversations?
It's a great question. I want to say I always like to go from that level of the framework, right? So I mentioned earlier the look, the feel, and the value. And when we talk about this, it's across the board. So this is in person, but also in the virtual space, kind of like we are today, and especially in this world more than ever. It is so necessary to have a level of consistency across the board. So the look is that visual appearance. Like, what are we looking like? You know, what are we wearing? What are we showing up as? Are we on camera dressed appropriately? Are we appearing alert and engaged? That's critical. That's one element, one component of it. The feel is the empathy. And women have an advantage here, in my humble opinion. I really think that if we lean in on our natural instincts of being empathetic and nurturing and open and vulnerable and outspoken, which comes to most women, generally speaking, more naturally, then we have an advantage here. That empathetic, setting the tone, being calm, being prepared, being approachable. Are we speaking with intention? We talked about intention as we were starting our show. Are we showing up to really connect with others? That would be the component of the feel, right? So that's the energy that we're sharing in that room. What type of energy are we bringing in? And then the last part of that framework is the value, right? What are we seeking to accomplish in that conversation, right? The problem solving, the wow factor, like what advantages or what new things, new lessons, new information are you sharing with the audience? So I think for women, what stands in our way more than anything is that imposter syndrome. Do we know enough? Are we good enough? Are we capable enough? Are we credible enough? And the thing is, when you're in a space where you have to own the moment. That's what executive presence is, in my opinion, right? Like if I'm on a stage, that's my moment. I've already, come to the point where I'm going to be on this stage. So I'm here. What I do with that moment is really up to me. And I think as women is we should probably stop questioning ourselves, like second guessing, wondering. You are in the best position. You are prepared. You know the content that you're about to speak about more than anyone else. So therefore, just own it and go for it and use that level of empathy that you have an advantage over men in general.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you talk about owning it. I'm hearing being confident in ourselves and what we know and what we do, really an element of trust in our capabilities, our competency. Yeah.
Yeah. I think confidence is just like anything else, any other trait and skill set. I would say skill set more so than a trait because it's still you could work on, you could practice, right? And so feeling internally confident will naturally come out as confident when you are in public or when you are, showing up with a team and trying to discuss things or when you're on a stage and it shouldn't matter as much, right? I do public speaking coaching too. So that's a whole different element, but they're quite connected,
very.
right? But if you've got that internal confidence, people can typically pick up on that. They could see that, they could feel that. But if you're questioning yourself, if you're not feeling as confident for whatever reason, because there's a million and one reasons right behind that, you may not just be having a good day. And so therefore you're worried, right? It could be even that, as simple as that. But it's so essential because people build the trust, right? And that's what executive presence is about, is you're building trust. Others are wanting to trust you in what you're sharing enough to follow you, right? As leaders or as someone who's, coaching them or someone who's sharing new information, they want to trust you. So in order to do that, they have to feel confident in that fact that you are confident, right?
Yeah. What do you say to when, you don't, to leaders who don't feel confident? Because we all have those moments regarding, regardless of how many years we've been doing it or it could be life circumstance, as you shared. It could also be, I find what oftentimes happens is when you're doing something new, delivering a message for the first time, new team, even like the size of the group can get you unnerved a little. What do you have to say there to help leaders regain their flow or energy space to stay, not, get back in line with what they want to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get that question asked a lot. And there's so many different things, right? There's so many things that I could tell you to do. One of them though is really trying to understand the why. Like, what is it about that moment that you're not feeling confident about? Or what is it that's going on in your life? Like being honest and digging in and trying to get to the root of that. Most cases more than not, and this is the same for public speaking, is just a fear of being in front of others and having to own that space. That is like the number one fear, right? It's up there with the fear of death. I mean, it's insane how much people fear being on the public stage or speaking in front of others, right? In general. So let alone being, having that executive presence and feeling like confident enough to do it in an impactful and influential way. So I always ask why. And then, two, I say, no one is going to know that information more than you. There's a reason why we're put in certain circumstances and situations. And it's because we have somehow, in some shape, way, or form, proven to be capable, competent, and to be worthy of that moment to own it. And so, like, you almost have to like self-talk. So yeah, you're talking internally to yourself about what is it about me that is feeling not so confident right now. But wait a minute, like there's also this part about me that put me here for a reason. Like I am meant for
Mm.
this. I am, here to do this. I am the best in this moment for this moment, right? And it's almost like a self ego booster because executive presence isn't about the ego. It really is about, and it's not a vain thing, but it's really about also a service for others. You almost have to think about you're in the best place to share with others. Therefore, get yourself there because they're relying on you for that moment as well. So I say that. The other part is, we could talk about this. We could talk about it day in and day out, and still you may not feel
Mm.
confident, right? Enough at different moments. I say, fake it till you make it. Stand up there, fake it till you make it. And it's a true thing because the more you practice being confident in that information, one, you have to be prepared, of course. I mean, absolutely. If you're not feeling confident, ask yourself, did I prepare? Because
Yeah.
that's critical.
Mm.
Like that, you can't go into any situation without preparing for it. And so no one is to blame for that, right? But if you've done that and you're there and you're just concerned how others are going to receive you, how your audience is going to receive you, you really just have to, take it in stride and really fake it, smile, put that good energy out there. And the more we smile, of course, scientifically, it's proven to show others that we're happy and they also smile. So they're more receptive, right? And I have, when I give public speaking courses, which is similar to executive presence, we talk a lot about those elements. What are some of the things you could do? Even taking a moment of silence and looking around the room and just getting comfortable, or, thinking about what you have to talk about, but looking at others as you're thinking through it and smiling and just kind of gaining that moment of grounding. I want to just add a really important piece of information, data, because oftentimes more than not, we're so worried about the content
Mm.
that's coming out of our mouth. Like we're so worried about all the details and the words and when we're going to say what, and let's have like a course of action and it's going to be scripted. But people don't want a script. They want to feel good. So 97%, there's a reason for this, 97% of any message we deliver is nonverbal, is the impression that people are taking from you is nonverbal. So that's so big. I mean, if you really, and I misspoke, I have to
I'm going to
take
say
that back actually.
97. Whoa. Oh,
93.
oh
It's
gosh,
93. It's still
only
high. Yeah. It's
4%.
actually 93.
Still,
Yes. 7% of what we,
wow.
like 7% of how we show up that people receive is only
I am
verbal.
blown away by that.
Yeah,
Wow.
55% of that, the communication is the visual. So my appearance, my posture, my expressions, and 38% is vocal. So that tone, the pace, the clarity, that's 38%. So 38% plus 55%,
Mm.
right? That's the visual. That's your 93%. And only 7% are the words that you're saying, which is why I say this to all of my clients. Really focus on how you feel, because whatever you feel inside, people are going to receive that. They're going to sense that. And that's the impression that you're going to leave with them. That's all that really matters, how you make them feel.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. So much great stuff you just gave there. Okay. I heard worthiness, in terms of just like a self-talk moment to say, like, assuming that you've done your homework and you're prepared. Right? Which, you know what?
Yes,
Some
very
of us do
important.
come in a little bit hot, and we are the people that are like on the airplane to arrive to the meeting, and we are preparing.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I have points for
Yeah.
that too. When you're not prepared, yes, there's pointers
Okay,
for that
well,
too.
maybe we need to cover
But
those,
yes,
because there's always this like time crunch element where, the conversations that leaders have that really matter are not the big speeches that are given on a stage. They're often hey, it's the all hands call that we do once a week,
Mhm.
or it's pick any number of what you would otherwise think are casual interactions. But
Hmm.
in every single one of those, as you pointed out, which is just really hit home for me, is this moment to have impact on how you want your audience to feel after you've shared what needs to be shared with them. And that is just a completely distinctive way of looking at it from how I've I have always looked at it, right? I mean, I'm tuned into that in a one-on-one conversation. I'm tuned into that when I want to give a formal talk. Uh, but to really just put some intention and focus on how does somebody feel? How do I want them to feel? That changes everything. And it takes some
Yeah.
pressure off, I think. To me, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, it's great. I love that you explained it this way because you're absolutely correct. We always think about that when we have a larger audience to perform in front of, right? We're thinking, how are they going to receive my message? But if we take that on a smaller scale in our day-to-day communication, this is again, it's not, business is critical. It's even with your
Yeah.
clients, right? These client calls, right? These cadence calls that you have, right? Review calls, right? New clients,
Yeah.
onboarding,
Hmm.
right? Or business development. A lot of my clients, I've come in and trained the managers and leaders about executive presence in conversations that are either one-on-one with clients, onboarding, reviewing, or offboarding, exiting, whatever it is, right? These are so critical. It matters just as much in the same way, if not more, because the one-on-one relationships that we're building with each other, how I'm showing up with you right now, Amy, if I'm not engaging you, if I'm not in tune with your reactions, how you're responding to me, where you're at, your emotions, I may not know everything, but whatever I'm able to pick up, we're not going to have a successful call, right? It's
Yeah.
that connection, that chemistry, that connection. And so I tell a lot of, my clients this, you don't want to, um, you know, demand attention. That's not what executive presence is about. It's not about, I'm here and you listen to me and this is what I've got, and I need you to do it. It's more about you want to command that moment. You want to command the level of um, attention that you get from whoever it is that you're talking. So your commanding is very different than demanding. Commanding, it's how you're showing up. It's me. I need to do the work. It's not an expectation of the other. It's what am I doing to command
Mm-hmm.
that? Right? Whereas demanding, I'm asking, and most people don't do well with demands. So when you're showing up on a hands and all hands, and I've done this with a lot of CEOs in particular, you tend to have to lead these all hands calls, right? And there's so many concerns of the individual contributors on the call versus the different department heads. And you know how
Yeah.
it is, right? And so how do you do that? How do you have excellent executive presence on calls like these with maybe 500 people on that call that all have different points of interest and needs and, problems to solve, etc. And the way that I would respond to that same question that I'm asking is that you involve them. It doesn't start from the all hands meeting. It starts way before that. Executive presence is how present you've been with these people, how much you've taken the time to really connect with them and listen and make them, feel and see the way that you look and show them value, the framework that I talked
Yeah.
about. What have you done in that process before you got to that room?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you've just changed my mind about thinking about executive presence as this thing that that you're doing like a skill, right? To more of a way of being. And in that being, it begins with the presence component, which is in my mind, the way that I've always thought about it is, right, I'm fully with you. I'm not thinking about being anywhere else. I'm not thinking about what do I have to do next? What meeting comes next after this? I'm right now with you fully. I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you, I'm engaging with you, I'm asking all the questions, and that showing up and being present, I just heard you say, is what fuels the connection when you're in front of the bigger team, to have shown up that way in those smaller interactions, those smaller meetings. And not that any of them are small, they're all consequential, just smaller audience, if you will, smaller group of
Yes.
people. And so that's real. I mean, it only makes sense, right? Presence is part of the phrase, that we would consider that that's an element of success in making that connection to the people that we're wanting to communicate with and present a message to. Hey, quick break for a second. If you are a sales leader who is ready for your next step up, and I'm talking about leading other sales leaders, becoming a director, a VP, even a CRO, then this is for you. I'm hosting a free workshop. You can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. This is for sales leaders who are in tech and are wanting to land jobs where you can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year. And again, you can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. Okay, back to the show.
Right. Right. And people value that because now that you've taken the time to value their time, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel respected. And so therefore, communication is give and take. It's interactive, right? It should be interactive in some way, shape, or form. That's the ideal successful communication. And so when they feel heard, feel respected, feel like you are there fully, they want to give you that. Now you've built the credibility and the trust. Now you could talk about the business and the what to do and what you should be commanding in that moment. And so you will be received more as a leader or as someone who's owning that moment. Because again, we talk about executive presence. It's not just about leadership. Everyone should have some level of awareness. It's a very important skill set to attain, right? In all communication, but people receive you when you receive them.
Yeah, I think about that. When I was leading sales teams, I would hire for executive presence, right? And these people were individual contributors. However, yeah, I've always hired for leadership. I want leadership no matter if you've got leader as a function of you think you're managing people or not. You're still managing yourself. You're managing all the colleagues that you interact with. There's usually a support team that's helping you out along the way. Those are management. That's leadership right there. And then you're leading the customer is the big leadership job, is to take the customer, the prospect, through this process of helping them navigate a really challenging business problem that they're trying to solve, and ultimately showcase that your widget is the better widget to solve the problem.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So to hear you talk about it from an individual standpoint certainly resonates for me. What are some of the things that you see people like mess up when they're trying to reach for this, this executive presence tool? What have you noticed that doesn't work?
Well, there's quite a lot. I think when people are too concerned with the next thing that they're going to say and do, more so than being in the moment with that individual. So one of the things that it varies, right? So for leaders and executives in particular, it's actually quite different than it is for individual contributors, like managers and, or so. And I'll tell you why in the business world. So, right, they're managing so many calls with clients, right? The managers, and they're trying to go from one call to the other or one meeting to the other in person. And there's just the time component is not on their side. And so it almost becomes robotic. So instead of focusing so much on building that relationship while also commanding the agenda and the meeting, right? They're just going through a robotic kind of, check, 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 check. And so they're losing the attention of that client or that audience or that whatever engagement that they're involved in. With leaders, they are so focused on the decision making, rightfully
Mm.
so, and some big items, and there could be some very heavy, monetary based items. And so sometimes it's hard for them to be present in the moment because they think that's too many like details. We're getting into the nitty gritty. They're great at it from above, but when it comes to the whole, like the all hands we were
Yeah.
talking about, they need support and guidance to bring them back, to make them more present and more connected with everybody else. So I would say that it's figuring out how to bring yourself back in. People, it's hard for us. We're thinking of like the bottom line or from 360, or bird's eye view or whatever. That's one thing. The other thing is, and worried about what we're going to say next or do next. The other thing I would say that gets in the way or becomes an obstacle from being present is not taking enough time to decompress. Completely different, but very important.
Say
Very, very
more.
important. I think we show up in a lot of spaces and places with so much on our
Yeah.
minds and on our heart,
Mm.
right? And this is really, really important because when you're showing up, you really should be showing up physically, mentally, emotionally, enthusiastically, professionally. That's a lot of pressure, right? And the reality is, we've got a lot of life outside of that professional space. We've got, our kids, our bills, our
All the things.
responsibilities, maybe a sick parent, maybe a divorce, whatever, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the things that are going on. So it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do me any good to show up in that way if I'm so consumed by everything else that I'm supposed to take care of. And it doesn't do Amy any good if I'm showing up with her in that mindset. And maybe this is not realistic, but it should be, is what I'm saying. Ideally speaking, we should dedicate some time to really decompress and figure out what it is that we're dealing with in order to be present in moments that require our executive, owning the moment personalities to show up. And so I tell people, especially those who are leading meetings, leading conversations, or with really important client calls, if you can cushion in some time in between all of that throughout the day to decompress, to process, to figure out what it is that you just had a conversation about, and to prepare for the next person that you're meeting with, or for the next event or meeting or conversation or speech, keynote, whatever it is, right? And I don't think we do enough of that. That's like work wise, personally, especially as women, we take on a lot. It's just a natural way of what we do. Like, how are we filling our own cup? Right? How are we leading
Yeah.
ourselves? How are we present executively for our lives that helps us become present for others when we're in those spaces? I think we need to make sure that we're taking care of that before we can show up otherwise for other people.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you said a lot there. I'm thinking back to the not that long ago when I was in this world where, I was on back-to-back calls every single day for like all week long.
I remember that
Right.
too. Guilty here too.
Uh, and I could run my business that way too now if I wanted, but I choose not to. And since I run my own business, I have to me a bit of more flexibility than I used to. However, when I really reflect on how I managed my calendar and did my calendar when I was leading those teams and responsible for them, I still had opportunity to take control. And I started to do that toward like the second year I was in my, the last corporate job that I had. And what I started to do was simple things like nobody got me for an hour. I did not
Mm-hmm.
book
Mm-hmm.
hour-long meetings. I
Yes.
booked 50-minute meetings and
Mm-hmm.
20-minute meetings. You are never going to get me for half an hour or a full hour.
Yep.
And when I experimented with doing that, I found that helped me get some of that cushion that I needed to
Mm-hmm.
do the mental switching that it took to get from one thing to the next. Plus, I got to be able to do things, like go to the restroom.
Right. Take a sip of water. Like,
Eat
yes.
a frozen
Yes.
burrito, which was like what I used to
Yes.
eat every day for lunch because I didn't have time for anything else. So that was something that worked for me. Are there other things that you've seen in the real day-to-day stuff that you
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
is on the menu for try this, give this a go? Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. I love, first of all, I love everything you said because I think it relates with the average corporate America, working individual, period, leader or individual contributor, period. That's just kind of the flow of things. And especially after COVID, I believe that we have more of those virtual meetings that are very exhausting and consuming. And we thought we could do it all because
Yeah,
we're home, right?
that's
We're
right.
home. We could do this. This is more leisurely. And I wanted to say that leaders have the responsibility of empowering others to own their time. I think we, and I'll say this about myself too. We fail our teams by showing up in the way that we do when we're going back to back, back to back, back to back,
Mm,
back to back, and we don't empower them to own, their calendars or to own their space. You can gift time away. I mean, trust me, and I'm sure you know this. People love when you're like, I just want a 20-minute meeting, not a 30-minute. That means you're going to have a cushion. They love that. They
I
appreciate that.
never
It
had
works
anybody
both
complain.
ways.
They never complained.
No one is going to complain. They love that. So I think I just wanted to point that out. I feel like we've got to empower others to also be executively present.
Yeah.
I believe that that's really, really important. And so, the other thing you were asking it if there's any other things that we should be doing, that was the question,
Yeah,
right?
like is there anything else that goes on the list of, hey, how do you afford yourself more breathing room that
Mhm.
allows you to be focused and present in those back-to-back conversations that you're inevitably going to find yourself in?
Yeah, I would say, like, what are you doing on during your free time? I think because it's so exhausting sometimes and
Mm,
depleting when we're on calls or meetings or when we're leading trainings or whatever it is that requires our attention, us to be present. It's so exhausting. Because sometimes when we do have that free time, when we have that weekend or that evening, we just kind of are like, oh, let me just sit back and do nothing, or let me scroll, or let me just, get all these things done, right? I have a
mm,
checklist to do as well,
mhm.
right? So we're either in that robotic go, 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 or we're like, I am just so done. But you have to be super intentional about how you're
Yeah.
recharging. How are you feeling that cup again, right? So the decompress is one thing, but the also like the fuel, the energy, the what you're doing that brings you happiness and joy and gets you to think creatively outside of all the things that you do at work is just as critical. And I think we always worry about time. Well, I don't have time, or I've got to get things done. And the list never ends. If I could tell my younger self, right? If I could tell my 20-year-old self that it's okay, like let's have a balance more so than a goals,
Mhm.
like the balance of things versus the reaching goals. Boy, I probably would be a very different person, and we wouldn't burn out, and we would show up more present, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Oh my gosh. I think of the things that I would have said, don't worry about that. That's not important. Like
Mm-hmm.
let that go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Or battles that you don't need
oh,
to be
so
consumed
many
by.
things. So many
Oh my
things that
gosh.
yeah, I would just call it
Yeah.
like a general letting go of things that really the question is
Mhm.
like, is this really important? And if the answer isn't yes, then it doesn't need to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings up a really good point. I mean, I think this is relevant for everyone as well. Thinking of like the bottom line, right? We should all have some sort of bottom line individually, just like a business has a bottom line, individuals should too. And so like defining that bottom line. What is my bottom? Does this feed into my bottom line? Is this relevant to that? Is this a priority that like affects that? If yes, okay, let me give it that attention or that time that it requires. But if it doesn't, then maybe it doesn't require my presence. My presence is requested elsewhere where it's going to make an impact.
Oh, you're starting to get into the land of delegation right there.
Yes. We can talk about that too. That's a whole conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation. Maybe we come back and do that. I want to, you said, since you offered this and want to take advantage of it, you said, I have tips for people who are, you have a short amount of time to get ready to go deliver a message. What's on your list of, okay, you don't have a lot of time to prepare. What is on the must-do list that helps that conversation go more quickly? Because I can't count the number of times I was asked in short order, like, oh, in 20 minutes, we need you to come rescue this deal that's circling the drain, or some employee fill in the blank of emergency fire drill of the day, where suddenly I had to just like get ready to go deliver a different kind of conversation than I would be prepared to do on a normal day-to-day basis.
100%. And, crises, that's like a number one thing, right? I do a lot of work in crisis communication. And so how do we show up for that? And sometimes most times it's short notice because it is crises. My first thing that I would say, the first point I would say is to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? Like, what is the point of this? Why am I getting on this call? Why am I doing an emergency, like all hands, or why am I sending, an email to all of employees, right? The employees or our clients or whatever it is, right? I was in news, right? So that's kind of like my background. When news breaks, is it worthy enough? Is it newsworthy to push out some content to the public, right? So you got to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? That's number one. Define that, make it clear, make it simple, everything, simplify it, right? So maybe the purpose is to inform, the employees of this current situation of new management that we have just, that we've been acquired. How about that? That we've been acquired. I want them to be informed, right? Very simple. Now you have to think, what are the 3 points, just three points that I want to make sure are clear and effective and, critical for my audience, whoever that audience is. Just 3 simple points, because you're not going to worry so much about the content. You're going to shift your attention on the delivery, right? Because you're going to be more concerned with the look and the feel and the value. You're going to go back to that framework. So 3 points. And then the last thing you're going to say, all right, let me assess this platform, meaning like, is this a virtual conversation that I'm having? Is this an in-person? How many people are going to be present? Who's going to be present? What do I need to wear? What do I need to look like? What do I need to be alert or, aware of? Maybe my boss will be there. Maybe my boss's boss will be there. Whatever the case, a high level client, and we're in the middle of like a sales conversation, a multi-million-dollar sales, conversation. Assess that situation. Why? Because that's going to help you show up in the best way possible, right? Because now you could think about how you want them to feel, those individuals in the room, right? Now you could either plug in a question for them, or you can make a remark that would get a response from them, or you might wear casual clothes, or you might wear more, a suit or whatever it is, right? Now you're going to focus more about how present you will be versus the content, because you're more concerned with the 93% of that nonverbal communication. Oh my gosh. You could do that in less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You could do that in 15 minutes sometimes.
Wow. Yeah. Slma, this has been really, really powerful, enjoyable. I learned a lot in this conversation. I hope everybody who's listening right now today learned something as well. Where can people find you if they want to find you and work with you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Well, I am on LinkedIn, Slma Shelbayah. You can also find me on my website, shelbayahconsulting.com. And we love to work with, again, we work in strategy, communication strategy, but we love to help support folks in executive presence and teams in particular. I love working with teams because you could see the synergy amongst them, and then they're all like consistent in the way that they approach it. So you could also email me at selma@shelbayahconsulting.com or through Amy. She would know
Yeah,
how to
I,
find
I
me.
would put people in touch. If you reach out to me, I know where to find her. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Well, what a pleasure it was to be with you this afternoon and today in this conversation. I'm so thrilled to have the opportunity to just be with you and
Thank
all the
you.
wonderful things that you
Oh,
shared with everybody. So, with that, I'm going to bring us to a
likewise, Amy.
close. Thank you. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining today. I know you're a super generous person, and a gift that you could give to someone you know, a friend, a colleague that you think would enjoy today's episode would be to send them a text, share a link to this episode with them. I do produce this show myself, and every time you share it, it helps the podcast grow and it supports the work that I do here. Also, if you happen to be a sales leader who is ready to take your next step up into a leader of leaders role, whether it's via promotion or you're ready to go get that new job at a new company, I'm talking about director roles, VP roles, even CRO roles in B2B tech, where you can earn $500,000 to $1 million or more. The workshop I'm giving is an hour-long workshop. It's totally free. You'll learn the process that I teach my clients on how to effectively position themselves, effectively network, and own their executive presence so they can land the job and get hired and promoted into these big sales leadership roles in B2B tech. If this sounds like you, come grab your spot. It's waiting for you at my website, amyevanscoaching.com, where you can unlock what's next for you.